What's up, you guys? Thanks for tuning into the Drew Deeks channel today. I'm doing a video today that I haven't done before in a sense because I haven't done it like this before. So if it feels a little bit scripted, there's a reason, and that is because I've done a lot of research, as much research as I possibly could have to come up with this viewpoint, and it's going to be on this, as you know. So the most compelling reasons why the Habs will pick Shane Wright as number one, and why, this is very important, of course, for this video, is that why Juraj Slafkovsky is the instant gratification choice if the Canadiens were to go with him, and why Shane Wright, of course, would be the long-term gratification choice. And the Habs need to get this first pick overall right. As you can see the W there at the end just for effect. But now we know that Bob McKenzie's draft rankings came out the other day, and of course this is such a big discussion on YouTube lately. And the reason I think it's possible that Bob could be wrong on this one, I mean, come on, if the Undertaker's streak can end at 21, guys, surely it's possible that Bob McKenzie could finally have his streak ended. He's been right about every first overall consensus pick in all of his draft rankings. But we also know that this is gathered from scouts. This is not coming directly from Bob. Okay, so the video that came out that intrigued my interest the most this week was from Grant McCagg and Tony Marinaro on the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro. I'm a subscriber, I'm a follower, I'm even a supporter, I would say. And I actually had the chance to work with Grant. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to go through a bunch of stuff here why I fundamentally disagree that Slafkovsky is the consensus first overall pick, according to Grant and even Bob McKenzie now. I'm going to try to do it in a respectful way. This is not a slight against Grant. I actually texted Grant the other day. We used to work together before I started on Habs Tonight. But anyway, let's get right to it, guys. I got all this stuff written out, so I will be breaking eye contact with you guys throughout this just to get right to the point. There's a ton of stuff here. There's about 2 pages, if I could show you this Word document of the things that I fundamentally disagreed about with Grant here, respectfully, of course. So let's go through it, guys. Let's just get right to it and talk about these two fellas right here, Shane Wright, Slafkovsky, why the responsible choice is still Shane Wright in my mind. And we're also going to hear from Shane Wright in a second, too, a 15-second clip or so from his most recent interview ahead of the draft here. So I'm going to get you guys right to it here. Okay, so for me, the biggest and most simple reason is because the sample size, as we know, simply just is not good enough from Slafkovsky in order to take him. And like I mentioned, the instant gratification choice, yes, Slafkovsky is the choice right now for the guy who's playing the hottest, who's playing the best. His stock has risen the quickest, but that's not what the Canadiens need right now. And I'm going to go through this, like I mentioned. Shane Wright knows who he is. He's calculated, methodical, and the most memorable word that he said is that he's cerebral. He's not flashy, and we'll get to that more later as well. Quotes here from Grant directly. NHL coaches wouldn't have had Shane Wright at center in the playoffs. He's got a lot to learn. And yes, of course, I agree with you because he shouldn't have been in the playoffs this year. He wouldn't be ready for that kind of responsibility, so I understand that. Every player that was good at 15, 16, this coming from Grant as well, and weren't good at 18 were never as good as they were touted to be. Examples from Grant: Angelo Esposito, Nail Yakupov, Nolan Patrick. Now, the Nolan Patrick one does concern me. It's pretty recent from 2017. And if you look at his numbers, yes, I can understand why he was so highly touted and he disappointed. But similar path to Nolan Patrick is what Shane Wright is on. That's what has Grant McCagg concerned so much. His compete, I don't see him proving. I don't see him proving as a player like I do Slafkovsky. I don't see him being a difference maker, top line center in the NHL. Wyatt Johnson, Mason McTavish, why were they able to improve by leaps and bounds during the COVID pause, but Shane Wright didn't seem to get any stronger or faster when the OHL season was canceled? I don't have a great answer for that one, so I really can't even give a rebuttal on that necessarily, but it's a good question. Slafkovsky exploded at the Olympics playing against men. Now, this is my point here, guys. Do we forget that the NHL was not at the Olympics? Therefore, yes, Slav was playing against men, but he was not playing against the best men. And I think that's a really key point when evaluating his Olympic performance. He did real well at the World Championship versus a lot of other NHLers. Yes, at the end of the NHL season, after these guys had already put in a full NHL season, I think that Slav's energy was probably a little higher than the NHL guys just coming out of a full 82-game schedule. Just a thought there. Bob McKenzie did mention, of course, that there's a razor-thin line between Shane Wright and Juraj Slafkovsky. It's razor-thin in terms of who's number one. So that's how close it is in his mind. So if you have the center on the line as being close, you go with the center. That's a quote there. Actually, I'm not sure even that's from Bob or somebody else, but Slafkovsky's not done growing, you guys. I don't know if you know this, but he could get as tall as 6'7". Tony Marino even asking Grant, has there ever been a 6'7" winger successful in the NHL before? He might not be done growing. Slav, in Grant's mind, is a mini Yager, impossible to get the puck from. That's intriguing. That's interesting. That's even exciting, possibly. His skill, his size, that's who he thinks of with complete upside, maybe a mini Yager, that kind of style. That's who it reminds Mr. McCagg of. Okay, so fair enough. Now, he seemed to think that they're taking Slav immediately on the top line. This is a scenario where if the Canadiens were to take Juraj Slafkovsky, if he was going to be a Canadian next year, McCagg sees him on the first line right away with Suzuki and Caulfield. While that does sound intriguing, I'll get to why I fundamentally disagree with that very much so in a moment. But he sees him producing, contributing right away. So why would we give him the world right out of the gate? That's my point, is that you say Shane Wright is in for a wake-up call in training camp. You don't think Slav is going to taste some of that adversity. Here's what I like more about Wright in this regard. What adversity has Slafkovsky gone through this year at the tender age of 18? All he's been had the last several months is that his tires have been pumped, telling him how great he is. Hasn't gone through any adversity. Shane Wright, you bet he's had adversity from the very start of this year, knowing he's likely the consensus #1 overall pick. The pressure got to him. He turned it around the second half of the season, as we know. By the sounds of it, though, and this is, again, going back to Slav, he's only been told that he's amazing, this and that. Shane Wright has already faced adversity, and that builds character, that builds perseverance. I would say perseverance is actually built, or character is built through perseverance, vice versa, however you want to say that. So that's a good sign there. Going through adversity, not a bad thing. It should be mentioned, of course, yes, some of you may fundamentally agree with Craig Button, but he calls Shane Wright a Patrice Bergeron clone. We'll get more to the Bergeron comparison in a second. We know that Craig was certainly wrong about the Canadiens in the playoffs in 2021. Anyway, not going to go on that. By the way, here's another great point. I think this is extremely, extremely important for why we should take Shane Wright. Okay, the Canadiens have a skills coach now. That's part of Shane Wright's game that can be developed in terms of whether there's skills that you just haven't seen the best of yet, whether it's his back checking, his defensive play, his compete level, which I know is a big one for Grant. Under the Bergevin era, there's a chance. Okay, actually, I skipped ahead. Sorry. So the Canadiens have a skills coach. That's part of Shane Wright's game that can be developed. Under the Bergevin era, I do think that the Habs might pick Slafkovsky, to be honest with you, in terms of the instant gratification thing here. Comparison, I'm not comparing, but it feels like Kotkaniemi all over again, which we just cannot have. Having Bob McKenzie place Shane Wright at #2 is the perfect scenario for him, not only to prove that ranking wrong, but to obliterate it in the coming years as he develops at the NHL level. This is a whole other page. I can't believe I have so much stuff here, but I'm going to try to get through this for you guys. I think it's better as it goes along. Okay. So what would you guys rather have? I'm going to ask you Montreal Canadiens fans this. What would you rather have? Have the Canadiens draft Slafkovsky, give him one of the biggest roles on the team right away, or select Shane Wright and have him properly develop into having one of the biggest roles on the team? What's the rush? Why put the first overall pick in a top spot right away and have the weight of the world on his shoulders right out of the gate? Kotkaniemi again. Is it worth the risk of thinking that he's that NHL ready by giving him one of the biggest roles right away in the hottest hockey market in the world? Not one of the hottest market, the brightest spotlight. Good luck. I mean, no pressure there, Slav. Even if the team is still in a rebuild, I don't think it's the ideal situation. The Canadiens' rebuild is not in this much of a hurry that you need to get this kid in the lineup next year, albeit the first line, and expect him to start producing and contributing right away. Why not draft the player at the position the Canadiens have not been able to successfully draft at since Guy Carbonneau, Domfus, Koivu? They thought they had a great center on Galchenyuk. They thought they had an even better one in Kotkaniemi. Neither one are here anymore. They need to get this pick right. And you see what I did there, of course. They need a highly skilled, defensively responsible two-way centerman with good character. The Canadiens worked extra hard this year to right the ship of this player development department once and for all after several years of failure. This is indisputable. You have to get this right. They cannot afford, while at the beginning of the real rebuild this time, to sacrifice again and fail again at filling top two center spots that they have not been able to do for a very, very long time. Having expectations tempered for Shane Wright is a good thing. It's a good thing for him and for the team that drafts him, ideally the Canadiens. Let him develop properly, and with the right amount of time, now you can ease him into the process of developing into a top two center in the NHL. Now, I like what Tony Marinaro said here, because without saying it, to me, it sounded like he thinks that Shane Wright is still the best pick for the Canadiens. In quotes from Tony, the recipe to success in the NHL and sustainability is being a bad team for several years. If you just want to be bad or terrible for 1 year and then start patching to get great all of a sudden, they tried it when they drafted Galchenyuk. They tried it with KK, and they tried to patch. It doesn't work. That way is not sustainable, right? He says to McCagg. And Grant's response is, I don't think there is any perfect recipe. Tony then references each cup winner having, for example, Stamkos, Hedman, Backstrom, Ovechkin, Kane, Taves. And then Grant said that Montreal will have Price and Slav as 2 top picks. Maybe they're the ones who take them to a cup. We don't know if Carey Price is going to play again, number one. But let me see. I think that the Canadiens would be better off going through more pain with Shane and try not to patch again, because it does not work. The losing will happen organically. They will try to construct the rebuild the right way. If you don't ice a great team, you're going to lose more often than not. This is also coming from Tony, and he thinks that that's what's going to go down. Now, Grant doesn't see them having a top pick in 5 years, or a top 5 pick in 2 years, because the Habs have too much talent. That's fine, but the Habs, in my opinion, need to have a top 5 pick, especially in 2023. Absolutely in 2023. Fantilli, Connor Bedard, and the other Russian kid, I can't pronounce his name right now. After this draft, the Habs will be top of NHL for prospects, which Grant says. I say no. I think next year, after 2023, is when, I think the Canadiens will be near the top teams in the NHL with the best prospects after 2022's draft, but I would really rather see them at the top after 2023, especially after the Bedard draft. Then you can really get real and say, okay, the rebuild's in full mode here. We've got 2 first-round picks in 2023 as well. So anyway, we need to go the extra mile and get another potential top player in the draft, and maybe even in 2024 as well. Okay, so this is already at 11 minutes. I was really hoping the video wasn't going to go this long, because, frankly, I hope you guys are still tuned in, because I think there's good points to be had here based on everything I just fired out at you guys, just, kind of verbatim. But so Shane Wright, let's hear from him. I want you guys to hear from him for a second. Of course, talking about the Patrice Bergeron comparison, and I think what he has to say is interesting. You guys might have seen this from Sportsnet. Let's check it out.
I might not, be flash and dash, with going end to end and making moves and all that, but I think that, with the way I play, kind of like, like Patrice Bergeron is, maybe don't get noticed as much, but definitely, have a huge impact on your team.
So what we heard earlier from Grant McCagg, especially, of course, was that he doesn't feel that he's going to be Shane Wright is going to be a top 2 center in the NHL. And this was not, you guys can say whatever you want about me, breaking down Grant's analysis here, but it is fair. He was a former scout. A lot of other scouts feel this way currently in the NHL. But to me, the most responsible, the best pick is Shane Wright for so many reasons. And like I mentioned, this going back and forth with titles here, but to me, Slafkovsky is the instant gratification right now choice. You're just doing the same thing with Galchenyuk and Kotkaniemi. I don't like the sounds of it. I know he could become a mini Yager. He's probably going to be a very, very skilled, very, very top-end player. At least that's what we're all sensing right now. We don't know the ceiling, but some feel Slafkovsky's ceiling is higher. However, Shane Wright is the long-term gratification choice that the Canadiens really need, especially when it comes to centermen. And I really love his approach. I like his character. I like the way he's handling this adversity of, having that debate back and forth with Slafkovsky. I think Shane's handling it really well. I don't know. I really think they need to get this pick right, as I mentioned here. So you guys let me know in the comments down below. I fired through a heck of a lot of stuff in this video, I know, but I like the idea of these two being your top 2 centers for the next several years, guys. What can I say? I am on the Shane Wright train, and I want to know what you guys think. This is my final analysis of why I feel Shane Wright is still, of course, going to be selected by the Canadiens. I think it's the best choice. I'm getting more excited as the days come. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon, guys. All my best. We'll see you at the draft. Cheers.